On the night of July 6, 1927, this man, Herman Barker, died with a bullet in his chest in Newton, Kansas. At the inquest, it was undetermined whether he had been shot while evading police arrest or whether he had committed suicide. One thing was clear, however. Herman Barker, like his brothers Arthur, Fred, and Lloyd, had been prepared since childhood for a life of crime and violence. This is The Witness. Not a trial, not a court of law, not a legislative inquiry, but a simulated hearing before a simulated committee. A committee representing the morality and the conscience of today, with the power to call before it the famous, the infamous, the evil and controversial figures of yesterday. Tonight's witness, Ma Barker. Ma Barker, who spawned 4 criminal sons in her own image. The incredible woman whom J. Edgar Hoover named Public Enemy Number 1. The woman rumored to be the undisputed leader of the vast and powerful Barker-Karpus gang of murderers, bank robbers, and kidnappers, which terrorized the Middle West. Ma Barker, a woman born of simple origins who rose to become one of the most infamous names in the history of U.S. crime. This hearing will be getting underway very shortly, but for now, we return you to our studios.
This portion of The Witness is brought to you by Helene Curtis, makers of End and Dandruff Treatment Shampoo and Tender Touch Dry Skin Bath Oil.
Look what's new from Helene Curtis, the people who know best how to care for your hair. It's new. It's for dry hair. New Special Endon Shampoo, specially formulated for dry hair. Special Endon is enriched so that it helps bring back liveliness to hair that has been stripped of natural oils. And because it is an Endon shampoo, it's guaranteed to end your dandruff problems when used regularly. Special Endon, like all Endon, is medically proved 99% effective as a dandruff treatment, wonderfully refreshing as a shampoo, leaves dull hair gleaming with a healthy shine. Just imagine your hair being this soft and silky, this easy to manage after a shampoo. That's because Special Endon is specially formulated for dry hair. Get new Special Endon shampoo for dry hair from the makers of these other famous Endon shampoos.
Back in the hearing room, this probe into the fantastic career of Ma Barker is just about ready to get underway. Down on the floor, the members of the committee have already taken their places at the hearing table. This is Mr. Frank A. Milan, Mr. Charles Hayden. Standing the chairman of the committee, Mr. Paul McGrath. And on Mr. McGrath's left, Mr. William W. Smithers. We're ready to get underway. Here's Chairman McGrath.
All right. I'll call this hearing to order. Ladies and gentlemen, may we have order and absolute quiet? If you please, sir. Now, I'll ask the photographers and reporters. Kindly take your seats, please. Return to your proper places now. Will you call Kate Barker, Mr. Barker?
Kate Barker? Mr. Chairman, this is Kate Barker, and I am Henry Stanhope here to represent her.
Very well, Mr. Stanhope. We're very pleased to see you. You may share that table with your client. Will you be seated now, sir?
Thanks.
No, Mrs. Barker, will you remain and be sworn?
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
State your full name.
This is Kate Barker.
Be seated, please.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
Before the committee proceeds, my client asks the privilege of making a statement.
Very well, sir. The committee will hear your client's statement.
Thank you, sir. My client is not exactly what you might call an educated woman. She's never before appeared before a committee of this sort, and as a simple housewife and mother, she might have some...
Excuse me, sir. I'm
Yes,
sure
sir?
the committee will have no difficulty understanding. Will you
Thank you.
proceed, Mrs. Barker, please?
I just want to say that I don't know why I'm here. I've suffered enough with all the lies the newspapers have been printing about me, and I think it's a shame and a disgrace the way the police have been persecuting me. They can't prove a single thing, and I'll tell you why. Because I've never done a single thing that I'm ashamed of. And I want you gentlemen to get that straight here and now. I'm a God-fearing, church-going woman and the mother of 4 boys. I bore them in pain and I raised them in love. And I nursed them. And when they were raised into men, I prayed for them. And then when my husband left me alone with my brood of 4, I protected them. Later, when they came into trouble, I grieved for them with an ache that any mother would know. Now, that's what I've done, and that's all I've done. And I don't have to apologize to you or anyone else. And I want you gentlemen to get that straight here and now.
All right, does that conclude your client's statement, Mr.
Thank you, sir.
Then we'll proceed with the questioning. Now, Mrs. Barker, you are Kate Barker, also sometimes known as Ma Barker and Mother Barker.
I am. And if folks want to call me Ma, I'm proud of it.
Where were you born, Mrs. Barker?
I was born in the Ozarks Mountains near Ash Grove, Missouri.
Would you say you had a happy childhood there?
What's that got to do with why I'm
Please
here?
answer the question, Mrs. Barker.
Right. My folks were poor but proud and devoted churchgoers. They raised me properly, and I went to Sunday school every blessed Sunday. I did my chores, and I minded my ma and pa. Now, if you want to make something out of that, go ahead.
Where'd you meet your husband, George Barker?
I met him at a Sunday school picnic. He took me as a child bride. We were married in Aurora. Then my sons started coming one after the other, and then George left.
Are you saying that he deserted you?
Well, George was weak. He was lazy, and he took to alcohol, and he didn't want to face a man's responsibilities, so he just left, and I never saw him again.
After your husband departed, Mrs. Barker, how did you support 4 sons? What did you do?
Well, I did what anybody do. I worked.
Mm-hmm.
I took in washing. I scrubbed the floor. Sometimes we were cold and hungry. I did what any mother would do. My boys were good boys. I taught them right from wrong.
They were good boys, and you taught them right from wrong?
That's what I said.
All right, let's see. Your oldest son was Herman Barker, the first of your 4 good sons. Is that right, Mrs. Barker?
That's right.
Now, isn't it true that Herman Barker, your good son Herman, as a teenage boy, was wanted by the police of several states for armed robbery and was a fugitive from justice?
That's a downright lie. He was innocent. The police just blamed him for it.
But you say he was a good boy.
That's right.
Where is he now? Where is Herman now, Mrs. Barker?
Dead.
Where did he die?
I don't want to talk about it. Let the dead rest in peace.
Mrs. Barker, we can appreciate that this is painful for you, but won't you tell us where he died?
I just don't want to talk about it.
How did he die, Mrs. Barker?
Do you think a mother wants to talk about her dead son? Haven't you got any feelings? What are you trying to do? Tear my heart out?
Will you please sit down, Mrs. Barker? Mr. Stanhope, would you see that your client sits? Thank you. Good.
Mrs. Barker, isn't it true that on the night of July 6th, 1927, your son Herman, your good son, was seen by witnesses trying to rob an ice station in Newton, Kansas, that in a gun battle he shot and killed a traffic officer named J.E. Marshall, that he himself was critically wounded, and on the following morning, your son Herman was found dead in a weed patch outside that city?
It's a downright lie. Herman never killed anybody. He couldn't. He was as soft as butter.
Then
he wouldn't even squash a fly.
How do you account for the fact that he was dead, found dead, with a .38 caliber bullet in his chest?
Committed suicide.
He committed suicide?
Yes, because the police were hounding him. He couldn't stand running all the time.
All right, let's take it down the line. Mrs. Barker, how did it happen that your son was seen in Newton on that night?
I don't know. I only know he didn't rob that ice station. The police just blamed him for it, like they always do.
In other words, it was just a coincidence. He just happened to be in Newton on that night. He happened to be near the ice station when it was robbed, and he happened to get himself shot. Is that what you're asking us to believe?
Believe what you want. I have nothing more to say except God rest my innocent boy's soul.
Thank you.
Mrs. Barker, your second son is Lloyd, and where is Lloyd now? Where is he now, Mrs. Barker?
In jail.
To be specific, he is now serving 25 years in Leavenworth for robbing United States mail. Isn't that right?
That's what they said he did. I know he didn't.
How do you know?
Because I went to my boy's cell after he was accused, and I brought the family Bible, and I made him put his hand on it and swear to his mother to tell the truth. And he told the truth. And I want to tell you something else. I'm fighting for his freedom. I've written to the governor and to everybody, and I'm never going to rest until I set him free.
Will you please sit down, Mrs. Barker?
I have a right to be heard.
Mrs. Barker, will you please sit down? You will have every opportunity of being heard before this committee, I assure you. Thank you.
Now, ma'am, your third son is Arthur, otherwise known as Doc Barker.
That's right.
Would you call him a good boy?
All my boys are good boys.
Including Arthur?
Including Arthur.
Well, ma'am, according to the record, he was caught for the theft of a government-owned automobile and sent to prison. He escaped, he was caught again, and again broke jail. 10 years later, your good boy, Arthur Barker, was sent to the Oklahoma State Penitentiary for the murder of a watchman during a hospital robbery, and he is now serving a life sentence. Is that your idea of a good boy, Mrs. Barker?
Lies. All lies.
Oh, come on, Mrs. Barker. It's right here in his police record.
Well, since when did the police ever tell the truth about a Barker?
Mrs. Barker? Mrs. Barker?
Yes.
Now, ma'am, we don't want you to think that we're trying to persecute you. All we're trying to get, ma'am, is some facts.
Well, at least there's one gentleman I could talk to.
Why, thank you very much, ma'am. Now, would you mind telling us, where is your son, Fred?
I don't know.
You don't know where your son, Fred, is?
No.
I see. Oh, Mrs. Barker, I see that you've been knitting a sweater there.
Yes, I have.
May I see it, please?
Sure, why not?
Oh, it's very pretty. It's a man's sweater, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Whom are you knitting it for, Mrs. Barker?
For one of my boys, naturally.
Which son, Mrs. Barker?
Well,
Which son?
what difference does it make which son?
It can't be for Herman, because Herman is dead. And your sons, Lloyd and Arthur, are both in prison. And Mrs. Barker, prisoners are not allowed to wear sweaters like that.
What are you getting at, mister?
You're knitting that sweater for your youngest son, Fred Barker, aren't you, Nick?
What if I am? A mother's got a right to knit a sweater.
You say you don't know where your young son, Fred, is, and yet you're knitting a sweater for him. Now, Mrs. Barker, does that make sense?
Figure he's coming home soon.
Well, now, Mrs. Barker, I'd like to get back to Mr. Milan's original question. Will you tell us where your son, Fred Barker, is now?
Told you I don't know.
Mrs.
And if
Barker.
I did, I wouldn't tell you.
But you do realize that your son, Fred, is at large after having escaped from the Kansas State Prison. That he is wanted, that there are warrants out for his arrest right now for bank robbery, burglary, kidnapping, and assault with intent to kill. Now, Mrs. Barker, is that your idea of a good boy?
He's my son, and that's good enough for me.
One of the sons that you taught right from wrong. You taught them a lot more than that, didn't you, Mrs. Barker?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, we'll try to make it clear. May we have Alfred Nix to the stand, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Will you call Alfred Nix, Mr. Clerk, please?
Alfred Nix. Alfred Nix, please.
Hi, Rob. Long time no see, huh? Well, you looking great. You full old molasses and vinegar.
Mr. Nix, will you please address your remarks to the committee?
Oh, yes, sure.
All right, thank you. We swear in the witness, please.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your full name.
Alfred Nix.
Be seated, please.
Mr. Nix, you are at present serving a 15-year term at Leavenworth for armed robbery. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Boy, you could have knocked me over with a feather. There I was just having my chow, and all of a sudden, I'm told the warden...
Yeah, thank you. I think we can dispense with that, Mr. Nix. Now, will you tell us, do you know the witness, Kate Barker?
You kidding me?
No.
Why, Mommy, we're old friends. I used to pal around with her boys. When I was just a little kid, I was a little shave. I was no bigger than that. Was that Mom?
Will you tell us where you first met the witness?
I met her at her house. I used to go over there for these here lessons.
Lessons? Well, what kind of lessons?
Well, they just wasn't reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Mr. Nix, tell us exactly what you learned at Mrs. Barker's house.
Well, you see, Mom wanted to teach your boys all the tricks of trade. You know, like busting into a store, or mugging some old dame for a satchel, or picking a pocket, or even starting a truck without keys, you know, stuff like that. Now, that was mostly for Herman and Lloyd, see? And the rest...
Herman and Lloyd, Mrs. Barker's sons.
Yeah, that's
Go
right.
ahead.
But some of us boys, we was invited in. Boy, we sure did have fun there, didn't we, Mom?
In other words, Mrs. Barker here was running a kind of elementary crime school.
Yeah, that's right. But you should have seen Ma down at the police station when one of us boys was picked up. Boy, she used to go... I tell you, you talk about them Hollywood actresses. Fool, boy, they had nothing on more. No, sir. She used to go up to the judge, you know, and she used to cry, and she used to beg, and she used to plead, and she used to promise to pay for anything we stole. anything we stole. And then she promised we'd never do it again. And, well, I tell you, just to get rid of her, they let us go. Boy, I tell you, Ma had some act. But when we got home, boy, that's when we really got it.
Got what?
We got the belt. Boy, we got the strap when we got home. She used to give us such a belting. Then she used to tell us what we did wrong, see? We just didn't learn that stuff. That stuff was drilled into us. You see, the next time we were out to mug someone, or to rob a store or something like that, we didn't make another mistake. Not that second time around. I tell you, Ma was the greatest.
Well, we're very much obliged for that graphic description, Mr. Nick. So that's how the 4 Barker boys learned their trade.
Oh, yeah, sure. They wouldn't have got no place without Ma.
No, I'm sure of it. All right, thank you very much, Mr. I don't think I have any other questions. Gentlemen, do you have anything?
No, I don't think we do.
Mr. Smithers? All right, Mr. Stanhope, you may cross-examine.
Nix, when
Henry, let me.
Mr. Chairman, my client desires to examine this witness.
Very well, permission granted.
Say, Al, tell me something.
Yeah, sure, Ma.
You ever take dope?
Well, I don't take it anymore, Ma.
No. Now, you know, and you just tell them that you've been taking it since you were 20 years old, isn't that right?
Yeah, that's right, Ma. But I don't take it no more. Honest, Ma.
You ever been a stool pigeon?
Well,
I'll go on. Tell them how you stool on your friends for money and a deal.
Well, you know, Ma, sometimes you kind of got to.
How many times you been in jail?
What are you trying to get at, Ma?
How many times?
I've been in jail 3 times.
What for? I'll tell you what for. Armed assault, robbery, and attempted rape.
Oh, Ma.
Just because I knew you when you were a dirty-faced kid and took you in and took pity on you, you lie about me. Just because I gave you a hot bath and mothered you a little, this is the gratitude I get.
Oh, Ma, I couldn't help
the
it.
kind of a witness you have to testify against me, a man that's a known criminal, a dope fiend, and 100% liar? What are you trying to do, blacken the name of a woman like me with a witness like this?
That's enough, Mrs. Barker. I'll have to ask you to calm down.
Calm down? After what this scum said? And what if my boys did steal a little when they were young? I ask every mother in here, what would you do in my place, starving without a piece of bread in the house and not a nickel in my purse? What if my boys did steal a little? It was for me, their mother. It was either steal or starve or stand there and cry and do nothing or watch the flesh grow thin on the bones of my children, or try to live any way we could. Steal or starve. Now I ask you, what would you do?
Ma Barker, rumored to head the most vicious band of hoodlums in the country, has just finished a highly emotional appeal, not to the committee, but shrewdly to the members of the audience in the committee room itself. Chairman McGrath has just declared a recess. We return you now to our studios.
Tender touch, look younger, feel smoother all over with tender touch.
New Dry Skin Bath Oil by Helene Curtis. Add just a touch of Tender Touch to your bath to end dry skin problems. Tender Touch smooths away rough, flaky skin. Moisturizes dry skin. Tender Touch seeps deep into thirsty pores. Acts like natural skin oils. Gives your skin a fresh, dewy look. You look younger. Feels smoother all over. Tender Touch bathes birthdays away. Protects you with a faint, silky dew. Keeps your precious skin oils from evaporating.
Look younger, feel smoother all over with Tender Touch.
New Dry Skin Bath Oil by Helene Curtis.
Back in the hearing room, the recess is over. Chairman McGrath is now calling for order, so we go to the floor.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, may we have order, please? Now, Mr. Barker, before we resume the proceedings, I want to caution you against any further emotional outbursts. Please restrain yourself.
Then restrain them. Ask me the right questions, and I'll give you the right answers.
Mrs. Barker, what do you know about the Barker Carpus gang?
Must be some other Barker. It's not me or my sons.
Did you know a hoodlum named Shotgun George Ziegler, alias George Getz?
No.
He was shot dead outside a cafe in Cicero by 4 men who carried sawed-off shotguns. Does that refresh your recollection?
No, never heard
You know
of
a hoodlum named Big Nick Perkins, sometimes called Charlie Potatoes?
Never heard of him.
Do the names Tiny Whaley, Andy Gray, Al Fitz, or Frank Tossi mean anything to you?
Never heard of them either.
Isn't it a fact that all these men are members of the Barker Karpus gang? And that Fred Barker, your son, together with one Alvin Karpus, formed this gang at your suggestion?
No, it isn't a fact.
Mrs. Barker, the FBI itself says that you not only know about this, but that you are the head of this gang.
I object to that statement, Mr. Chairman. First, it's not a question, it's just a statement. My client is not the head of anything. Mr. Smithers, you are not here under oath, sir. You can't just make statements.
All right. Now, really, Mr. Stanhope, you are not under oath either. I'll sustain your objection, but I'll direct that both statements be stricken from the record.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, but there never has been one single scrap of evidence that my client has ever been involved with this so-called gang. Nothing to even remotely connect her with these murders, kidnappings, and bank robberies. I submit, sir, that mere allegations by the press and the police should not be entertained as fact by this committee.
I think I can assure you that we will produce testimony with much more substance than mere allegation. If that's an objection, it's overruled. Sit down, please, sir.
All right, Mr. Stanhope. We'll get down to some facts. Miss Barker, where have you made your residence in the last 2 years?
In Bluff City, in Kansas City.
And in St. Paul, Chicago, Tulsa, and St. Louis. Is that correct?
If you say so.
That's an awful lot of moving around for 2 years, isn't it?
Well, what of it?
Well, what prompted you to move so many times, Miss Barker?
I got itchy feet. I like to go places and do things, okay?
Mrs. Barker, our investigators tell us that shortly after you left each one of these cities, a bank in that particular city was robbed. For instance, in Kansas City, the Merchants Trust was robbed 2 weeks after your departure. St. Paul, it was the People's National, 6 days after you moved from that city. Chicago, Metropolitan Savings, 5 days after you left. Tulsa, the Commercial Savings, a week after you closed your apartment there. And finally, the Boulevard Trust in St. Louis. That was robbed on the 6th of April last year, which was 4 days after you left that city. Anything to say to that?
No, it was just a coincidence.
Rather remarkable coincidence, wouldn't you say?
Well, you say so. I haven't said anything.
Never ever saw one of those banks?
Never saw one of those banks.
Never ever been inside any of them?
No.
Mrs. Barker, are you telling us that you never cased a bank?
Case? What does that mean, Henry? Oh, case. It's kind of cute. No, I never cased a bank. I got better things to do with my time.
You mean you never planned any of these bank robberies?
Me? I only know that banks are a place where you pay your mortgage or keep your money, if you've got any. Good Lord, what do I know about banks?
Mrs. Barker, that's precisely what we intend to find out. Mr. McGrath, could we call Mr. Andrew Bannister now, please?
Certainly, Mr. Milan. Will you call Andrew Bannister, Mr. Clerk?
Andrew Bannister? Andrew Bannister, please.
Get an eyeful, Buster.
Take the oath, please, sir.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name.
Andrew Bannister.
Be seated, please.
Mr. Bannister, the committee is very appreciative of your coming down from St. Louis to testify. Now, sir, for the record, what is your occupation?
I'm manager of the Boulevard Trust in St. Louis.
I see. Now, your bank was robbed, was it not, on April 6th of last year?
Yes, sir. We lost over $50,000.
Mr. Bannister, have you ever seen this woman before?
Of course. But her appearance has changed. Her hair was snow white then instead of the blonde it is now.
Now, when did you first see her, Mr. Bannister?
Last year. The end of February.
Well, that would be about 5 weeks before the robbery?
That's right. She came into our bank and introduced herself.
As Mrs. Barker?
Oh, no. As a widow. Mrs. Stephen Williams.
I see. Now, go on, please, sir.
Well, she had some money to deposit, $200. The clerk started to register her new account, but she seemed a trifle timid and extremely worried.
About what, Mr. Bannister?
Why, about the safety of our bank. She said that she had never used a bank and, in fact, had never even seen one. Naturally, the clerk turned her over to me.
Well, why was that, sir?
Well, it's a matter of policy. Public relations, if you wish. At Boulevard Trust, we like to have our depositors have confidence in us. Nevertheless, she did ask me a great many questions.
What kind of questions?
Well, what we did to protect our cash at night. And what precautions we took against being robbed. And did we have any
iron boxes in which she could keep her money.
Iron boxes, sir?
She meant vaults, of course.
I see. And what did you tell the little lady? How did you reassure her that her funds were going to be safe in your bank?
Well, she seemed so concerned that I told her she could see for herself. After all, at the time, she seemed a very nice old lady, and I saw no harm in it.
Exactly what did you show her?
Everything.
Everything? Now, Mr. Bannister, would you be a little bit more explicit, sir?
Well, first I showed her the alarm buttons at the feet of the cashiers, and then I showed her the burglar alarms. And then I took her down to the vaults and showed her the time locks. I showed her how we moved the cash into the main vault at night.
All right. Now, let's dispense with the levity, if you please. Go on.
She even wanted to know how we moved our cash from one branch to another, and I told her that. She really... I never thought that there was anything odd about it.
Well, sir, did Mrs. Barker return to the bank after that?
Oh, yes, several times. She became a depositor, and we struck up quite a friendship.
When was the last
She did seem to be very interested in banking.
When was the last time you saw this lady?
4 days before the robbery.
That would be on the 2nd of April last?
That's right. She came into the bank, and she thanked me for taking care of her money. She said that she was moving to another city, and she closed her account and withdrew her balance, $68. I suppose she wanted to be sure she got that as well.
Now, sir, by that time, as a result of your extraordinary courtesy, would you say that Mrs. Barker knew every detail of the protective system of your bank?
As well as I knew it.
Yes, I'm sure she did. Well, I have no further questions. Gentlemen, do you have anything?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Stanhope. you may-
Mr. Bannister, Miss Barker didn't ask to see your bank. You offered to show her around. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right.
Is it so unusual for a depositor to be concerned about how her funds are going to be protected?
No, it's not
Miss
unusual.
Barker isn't the first and only depositor you've shown around your bank now, is she?
No, sir.
You've conducted this kind of tour for quite a few other people now, too, haven't you?
Several, yes.
Many of them?
Yes?
Were any of them men?
Yes, sir.
Would it be fair to say that most of them were men?
Well, yes.
Now, Mr. Bannister, were you in the bank on the morning it was robbed?
Of course.
You saw the thieves?
Yes.
They wore masks, so you couldn't recognize them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There was one thing you could recognize about them, Mr. Bannister, one thing you could not possibly mistake. They were all men now, weren't they?
Yes, sir.
You didn't see a single woman among them?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. That'll be all.
Very well. You may step down, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Bannister. You're excused.
I'm going to keep my money under my mattress.
Mrs. Barker, the committee has in its possession affidavits from 4 people who leased apartments to you in various cities. Each of them states that wherever you lived, your house was always full of men who stayed with you for periods of time. Is that
Men?
true? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you mean my lost souls.
Your what?
My lost souls. You see, some people take in stray dogs and cats, but I've got a fondness for young boys down on their luck. Reminds me of my own boys, I guess. So I take them in and give them a little mothering and straighten them out.
Exactly what do you do for them?
Well, I feed them and buy them a new suit and give them a little faith and send them on their way.
How about medical aid? Do you ever help them medically?
Medically? I don't
Yes.
know what you mean.
Well, I'll help you. Is the name of Dr. Joseph P. Moran familiar to you?
No.
No? Dr. Joseph P. Moran, 33 Albert Lane, St. Louis, Missouri, an unlicensed plastic surgeon held in disrepute by his own profession, a known underworld doctor. Does that refresh your memory?
I never heard of Dr. Moran.
Did you ever send anyone to this Dr. Moran, any of your lost souls?
Of course not. Why should I do that?
Mrs. Barker, didn't you send several of these men to Dr. Moran to have their faces changed after bank robberies so that the police would not recognize them or identify them?
Of course not.
Do you know this man? Would you give this photograph to Mrs. Barker, please? Do you know the man in the photograph, Mrs. Barker?
He doesn't look familiar.
Isn't he one of your lost souls?
I've had so many of them, I can't remember them all.
Did you send that man to Dr. Moran?
No, I didn't. What would I do that for?
Do you know the man in the photograph?
No.
Let's see if he knows you. May we call Joseph Pouchot to the stand?
Yes, certainly. Call Joseph Pouchot.
Joseph Pouchot! Joseph Pouchot, please.
What's the matter, Ma? Don't you recognize me? You did this, Ma. How do you like it?
Joe Pouchot, ex-member of the Barker Carpus gang, has just accused Ma Barker of viciously disfiguring his face. The hearing room is in an uproar. Chairman McGrath is trying to restore order. We'll rejoin the proceedings shortly, but for now, back to our studios.
The coronation of King Rudolph of Ruritania, an event of solemn majesty. But behind this glittering facade, a dark and sinister secret. The story of the Prisoner of Zenda. The Prisoner of Zenda, Anthony Hope's classic tale of royal romance and intrigue, comes to your television screen in a thrilling 90-minute production as the show of the month. Here is the story of a fantastic scheme to seize an empire, a story of tender romance and desire, a story of conflict as men fought for a throne and a woman's devotion. The production stars Farley Granger, Inga Stevens, Nancy Wickwire, and myself, Christopher Plummer. Won't you join us for this exciting drama, The Prisoner of Zenda, the show of the month, Wednesday, January the 18th, on most of these stations.
Back in the hearing room, Chairman McGrath has called for a brief recess in order to restore order. Down on the floor, the newspaper photographers are having a field day with the new witness, Joe Pouchot, and strangely, he does not seem to mind. Pouchot is expected to tell the committee exactly how Ma Barker forced him to undergo plastic surgery. But until the committee reconvenes, we return you briefly to our studios.
This portion of the witness was brought to you by Helene Curtis, makers of End and Dandruff Treatment Shampoo and Tender Touch Dry Skin Bath Oil.
The hearing has been resumed, and the new witness, Joseph Pouchot, has been sworn in. The committee has just established the fact that Mr. Pouchot is now serving 10 years for armed robbery and has been brought here in custody to testify at this hearing.
Now, Mr. Pouchot, I ask you this for the record. Do you know the witness, Mrs. Barker?
Know her? I'll say I do. Only she had red hair then, not blonde like it is now. Easy to change your hair, ain't it, Ma? Just put a little dye in it and rinse it out. But I can't do that to my face, can I, Ma? I can't rinse it out. And these. What am I going to do about these, Ma? Do you think a manicure will help?
No, please address your remarks to the committee, Mr. Pouchot.
Okay.
Weren't you a member of the so-called Barker Carpus gang?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Pouchot, Mrs. Barker has denied that such a gang ever existed.
Yeah, it figures. Come on, Ma. Who are you kidding?
How many men were in the gang, Pouchot?
Varied. 30, 35 maybe.
And what were their criminal activities?
Name it. Burglary, highway robbery, hijacking, bank robbery.
And kidnapping?
I don't know anything about any snatching.
You say you know nothing about the kidnapping of a Minneapolis brewer named Lawrence A. March on July 10, 1933 for a ransom of $50,000?
No.
You say you know nothing about the kidnapping of the president of the Federal Bank of Minneapolis, Franklin P. Anderson, on December 10, 1934 for a ransom of $250,000?
No. If there was any snatching done, it was after my time.
What do you mean, after your time?
After this happened, I left the mob.
Mr. Pouchot, when you have 30 or 35 hoodlums assembled into one gang, that gang requires a strong leader, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Somebody with authority, somebody that they would obey, somebody whose power of punishment they would respect and fear. Isn't that right?
That's right.
Who was the leader of the Barker Carpus gang?
Mother McCree here.
Mrs. Kate Barker.
Oh, nobody else. She was the boss, the brains, the works.
You dirty lying rat! Do I have to listen to this scum?
Please sit down, Mrs. Barker. Mrs. Barker, will you please sit down? You will have ample opportunity to cross-examine the witness later if you wish.
I can't wait.
Mr. Pouchot, did Mrs. Barker ever share her leadership of this gang with anyone?
Ma, you crazy? Ma wouldn't let you talk. She'd slap you down the minute you started to say something.
Suppose somebody refused to be slapped down, as you call it. What happened then?
They'd end up with a bullet in the neck. A knife in the gut.
On Mrs. Barker's orders?
Who else?
Is that what happened to Shotgun George Ziegler?
Yeah. Ma got mad because George wouldn't take orders. George likes shotguns, he said, so let's give him a few. George got 4 of them at Cicero. It always gave Ma a big laugh. I mean, about giving George the shotguns.
Pusho, how much money did the Barker Carpus gang loot from banks during the time you were with them?
I got no idea.
Isn't it a fact that the loot from all these banks totaled $145,000?
Could be.
Well, weren't you present when the money was counted?
No, none of us were. Ma counted the money. Only Ma, alone.
But you did share in the money, didn't you?
Oh, she gave us a stack of bills and told us to go out and have a good time. You know, just like we were children. But she never gave us our share.
Well, didn't you protest?
You think we were crazy? Squawk about what Ma gave us? That was like asking for a ticket to the morgue.
Well, what happened to all this money?
Why don't you ask Ma here? She's the one that did all the living. High off the hog. Hey, Ma, how come you're here looking like some square from Decatur? How come you're not wearing your mink or seal?
Joe, I'm
and the
warning
diamond
you.
necklace and the big black limousine? You got it parked outside, or did you come here by trolley car? What are you playing fool mouth for?
No, Mr. Peugeot. Address your remarks to the committee, if you please, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Peugeot, let's get back to the bank robberies. How did Mrs. Barker plan these robberies?
Well, after we cracked the bank, we'd keep on the move. Ma would pick out a city, take a lease on an apartment. Then she'd check out another bank, case it, and then draw up our powder chart.
What is a powder chart, sir?
Our getaway. Ma would get a lot of road maps, sit up nights studying them. She'd mark every curve and every side road. She'd figure out how fast we could make them curves without tipping over so that we could take them in high while a posse behind us might crash. She'd figured she would make us make those roads 4 or 5 times just so that we'd see them in the dark without our lights. That way we'd make our getaway good.
During one of these bank holdups, Mr. Peugeot, were you seen or identified?
Once. That's how I got this. Ma?
Tell us exactly what happened, sir.
Well, I was sitting at the wheel of this job we did in Tulsa.
That's the Commercial Savings Bank, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Go ahead, sir, please.
All of a sudden, the boys came running out of the bank with the dough. They started ripping off their masks and jumping into the car. This dumb cop on the corner came running over and got a good look at us before Freddie Barker gunned him down. When we found out later that he wasn't dead and only wounded, Ma began to worry.
Because the policeman could identify you.
Yeah, that's it. She figured that now that we'd been spotted, we were hot. And that the FBI would get a line on her and the whole mob. Up to now, they didn't have a thing on her. See what I mean?
Now tell us exactly what happened next, Mr. Bouchard.
Well, Ma decided we had to get our faces changed and our fingerprints.
You mean all of you?
All 5 of us in that car.
Mr. Peugeot, you consented to this operation?
We didn't like the idea.
But you did consent to it, didn't you?
Mister, you don't know the little lady. I told you before, nobody argues with Ma Barker, but nobody.
Where was this operation performed, Mr. Peugeot?
She sent us to this Dr. Moran.
That's a lie!
A drunk and a butcher. He didn't even have any dope to put us out. Just gave us some booze to help us with the pain. My face felt as though he were cutting me with red-hot knives. Same with my fingers. Then when I got out from under the bandages and took my first look in the mirror...
And the other 4 men were disfigured in the same way?
Yeah. We all looked like Frankensteins. She murdered the 5 of us. Maybe we're all still walking, but we're really dead. Walking zombies. You know what that means. You know how it feels to look in the mirror and see this. Do you know how it feels to have a girl look at you and turn away as if she was going to get sick? I used to look like this, Ma. Remember? They used to call me Bo. Bo Peugeot. Remember? How do you like what you've done, Ma?
All right, guard. Bring him back to the witness stand, please. Now, Mr. Peugeot, I'll have to ask you to behave yourself. You all right, Mr. Barker? I have no further questions, gentlemen. Do you have anything?
No questions.
Smithers? You may cross-examine, Mr. Stanhope.
You drink, don't you, Pusho?
I take a drink now and then.
Now and then. Aren't you a confirmed alcoholic and haven't you been institutionalized for it?
I had a little trouble, yes.
What'd you do before you met Miss Barker?
This and that.
Didn't you have a criminal record long before you met Miss Barker?
I was picked up a few times, sure.
Where were you picked up the last time?
In Chicago.
Let's be more specific.
Didn't I pick you up out of the gutter dead drunk and starving? And didn't I feed you and keep you away from liquor?
All right.
And is this the gratitude I get? Lying about me?
I'm not lying.
Mr. Pusho, is it not a fact that you and the 5 others in that car were afraid of being picked up by the police, and that you and they went to this Dr. Moran of your own volition?
I told you my orders us to.
She ordered you to. You expect these gentlemen to believe that 5 top hoodlums and bank robbers were afraid of one weak woman, that you had your faces disfigured because she made you do this against your own will?
It's the truth.
Gentlemen, I believe your credulity has been abused long enough. I have no more questions.
We don't need your comments, sir. All right, Mr. Pusho, you are excused. You may step down, guard.
Remember me, Ma.
Mrs. Barker, you have continually and persistently denied any association with the Barker Karpis gang. After this testimony, do you deny that association any longer?
I've been denying it all day.
And you still deny it?
I wouldn't know any of them if they dropped dead in front of me.
All right.
Chairman, may we call Blossom Night? Will you call Blossom Night, Mr. Clerk, please?
Blossom Night. Blossom Night, please. Raise your right hand. Left hand to the Bible. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name.
Blossom Night.
Be seated.
Miss Knight, do you know the witness, Mrs. Barker?
Ma, I sure do.
Will you tell us under what circumstances you became acquainted with her?
It's Freddie Barker's girlfriend. Until that battle, I stepped in between us.
Oh, you're not going to let this tramp testify? She's nothing but a 10-cent trollop. She tell you nothing but lies.
Lies. All I have to do is tell the truth to fix you. You just had your hair curled in a beauty parlor, huh? Well, I'm going to make it sizzle.
Tramp!
Don't call me a tramp.
Tramp off the street!
If I'm off the streets, you're out of the sewer. Not good enough for you, huh? Who do you think you are? Joan of Arc? Murderer, that's what you are. You're just a cheat.
Ladies.
Blossom Night, Freddie Barker's ex-girlfriend, has answered Ma Barker's charges that she's a tramp with equally harsh accusations. The bailiffs have separated the 2 women, and while order is trying to be restored, we'll return you briefly to our studios.
San Francisco, headquarters for an organization of unique purpose, the prevention of violent death.
Checkmate, checkmate, checkmate.
I told you about Barney Jacks.
Oh, yeah, the guy that runs a nightclub in L.A.
He was shot in a holdup. Now he can put his finger on the gunman, only he's afraid they'll go after his daughter, Susie.
Oh, yeah?
Well, someone has to go down there to bring Susie up here to hide out until they can put the gunman away.
Oh, and you want me to...
Dr. Hyatt and I are tied up or we'd go.
Well, I know he's a friend of yours, Don, but I'm really not very good with kids. A little girl yet.
I think I've got a picture of Susie someplace around here.
No, I'd rather have a jet.
Susie, but...
Uh-huh. And charge that to Checkmate.
Checkmate, starring Anthony George, Doug McClure, and Sebastian Cabot. Meet them for Mysteries, Saturday nights on most of these stations.
Down in the hearing room, Chairman McGrath has finally managed to restore order, and now the committee resumes its questioning of Blossom Knight, Fred Barker's ex-girlfriend.
Miss Knight, did you know any of the other members of the Barker Karpis gang?
On and off. They came and they went.
Did you know a man named Ziegler, for example?
Ziegler?
Yes.
Gorgeous Georgie? Sure, I knew him. He was cute, real cute. It's too bad that he tried to tell Ma off. He ran into a little bad luck at Cicero. Is that right, Ma?
Don't push your luck, tramp.
Miss Knight. Are the names Al Fitz, Tiny Whaley, Frank Tossey, Andy Gray, and Big Nick Perkins familiar to you?
Sure, I knew them all. It was all sports. Nice fellas and big spenders, too. Of course, I went with Freddie.
Miss Knight, what was your exact relationship with Fred Barker?
Exact relationship?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't get you, mister. I mean, he was a he and I was a she. He was my boyfriend. As the French say, vive la différence.
I see.
But for a while, we was serious. We was going real steady. He even gave me a ring.
Oh, then you were planning to get married, is that right?
That's right. So we had future mother-in-law trouble. And man, did we have mother-in-law trouble.
In other words, Mrs. Barker interfered with your wedding plans, is that it?
Yeah, that's it in spades. She was always cutting me up the back every time Freddie was around. She had every one of those boys under her thumb. They was scared to death of her. One word from her and they jumped. Sometimes I didn't know if Freddie Barker was my boyfriend or hers.
Oh, shut your filthy mouth. Is it wrong for a mother to love her sons and her sons to love her?
Now, please allow the witness to continue, Mrs. Barker. All right, go on, please, Miss Knight. Sorry.
Well, finally, I couldn't stand it any longer. Do you know what I mean? One thing about Ma, she can't stand any other women around. You'll notice that none of the boys ever got married. Lloyd or Doc, none of them. She kept poisoning Freddie's mind against me, calling me all kinds of names.
Names? What names, Miss Knight?
Names I couldn't mention here.
I see. And what happened then?
Well, Freddie and me had a showdown. I said, it's your mother or me, Freddie. You're a big boy now, and you got to choose.
Who'd he choose, tramp? Who'd he choose?
He would have married me if you'd let him alone.
Do you think I'd let him marry Poison?
Poison?
Easy mark for a pair of pants. Cheap ballroom trollop.
Don't you call me trollop once more.
Trollop! Trollop! Go trollop!
Bring Miss Knight back to the stand. Now, Miss Knight, we will not permit this kind of behavior. You are out of order, too, Mrs. Barker.
I have a right to defend my son. Do you think I want them in the clutches of that immoral woman?
Oh, immoral, am I? The pot calls the kettle black.
Now,
huh?
Miss Knight, please.
Oh, listen, I heard what she said before about her husband, George. Well, let me tell you, that Hearts and Flowers routine is older than Ma herself, which makes it pretty ancient. He didn't run off and leave her. She threw him out. And why? Because some other guy came along with a bay rum breath and a silk shirt, and she fell for him like that. Ran off and left her in the kiddies, huh? Bull, she's taken more men than she's taken banks.
She's lying, can't you see?
She not only had lovers, she had her sons trained to do anything she wanted. That's why she broke me and Freddie up, because I would have made a man out of him.
Shut your mouth. The only man you had paid for it.
And how did your sons pay? How about Herman, Lloyd, and Arthur? Dead or in jail, aren't they? And Freddie, do you think that he's not paying for it? He's wanted half a dozen.
Now, Miss Knight.
Listen, Freddie didn't want no part of those robberies or those kidnappings. None of them did. She had a gun against their heads ever since they was kids. Freddie didn't have any choice. Not about what he did, not about me, and least of all about her.
Miss Knight, was Fred Barker involved in the kidnappings of Lawrence March and Franklin Anderson?
Listen, I ain't got nothing against Freddie. As far as I'm concerned, you got the one that ought to get the lumps. You want to know what she done, you get it out of her. I never was a member of that family, so I wouldn't know. I mean, I could have been. Freddie and me could have been together right now if it wasn't for her. And I wouldn't be running from the cops, and neither would Freddie.
All right. All right, Miss Knight, thank you. I have no further questions, gentlemen. Mr. Stanhope.
Miss Knight.
Get her out of here, or I'm sick of her.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Very well, Miss Knight, you are excused. You may step down. Thank you. Now, Mrs. Barker, I ask you once again, do you deny that you headed a gang which stole, robbed, kidnapped, and murdered?
I've been denying it all day.
Well, I think I ought to tell you, Mrs. Barker, that we have arranged to bring your son, Lloyd Barker, down here from Leavenworth, and that he's waiting our call outside this room right now.
Lloyd? Oh, where is he? Where is he? I want to see my son.
Now, before we bring him in here, Mrs. Barker, do you want to change any of the statements that you've made?
Why didn't you tell me Lloyd was here? He'll tell you what kind of a mother I am.
Well, he'll have every opportunity now, Mrs. Barker, I assure you. Call Lloyd Barker.
Lloyd Barker! Lloyd Barker!
Oh, Lloyd. Lloyd, my boy.
Hello, Mom.
Oh, let me look at him.
No, Mrs. Barker.
Now, you tell him what kind of a mother I am, will you? You tell him the truth.
Would you please return to your seat? Swear in the witness, please.
Raise your right hand.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
State your full name.
My name is Lloyd Barker.
Be seated, please. Now, Mr. Barker, are you at present serving a 25-year term at Leavenworth Penitentiary for robbing the United States mails?
Yes, sir, that's right.
Have you heard any of the testimony here today?
Nope.
Where were you during the course of this hearing?
I was in a room down the hall.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Barker, were you a member of the Barker-Carpus gang?
I told him that it was all a mistake, son. That you didn't do nothing, that you were put in there on a frame.
Don't you know when it's all over, Ma? Don't you know when to give up?
What?
It's over, Ma. All the lying in the world won't help now. You know it wasn't no frame, and I know it. They caught me with over $10,000 in bills on me. Now, how are you going to lie that away?
Sir, I'd like to repeat the question. Were you a member of the Barker-Carpus gang?
Yes, I was.
Now, sir, we questioned your mother before you came in about her role in this group, and she denied that she had anything to do with it.
Yeah? Well, she had everything to do with it.
Everything?
Yes, sir. She started it. She led it. Planned all the jobs. Took all the money. She was the gang.
What you doing, son? What you doing?
I'm telling the truth, Ma. Did you ever hear the truth? I never did until just now, and I was sitting in that cell, wondering how'd I get here and why. You never taught me that word, Ma. I had to learn it all by myself.
What you do, beat him up? You don't have to tell them nothing, son. You hear that?
You got me wrong, Ma. I gotta tell them. I gotta tell them everything and get it out of my system once and for all. Don't you understand, Ma? I want to tell them. I'm sick of all this lying. All this lying and running and hiding and getting caught.
Don't do it, son.
Now, try to get it through your head, Ma, that I've had it. Don't you realize it, Ma, that there ain't no gang anymore. There ain't no more jobs to do, and you got no more sons to do 'em.
I don't know what they promised you, but I'll get you out and we'll go home and we'll start over.
Still dreaming, huh, Ma? That great big dream, huh? Arthur and Freddie and Herman and me all together again, huh?
Barker, was your mother responsible for the robberies of banks in the following cities? St. Paul?
Yes, sir.
Tulsa?
Yes, sir.
Kansas City?
That's right, sir.
Chicago?
Yes, sir.
And St. Louis?
Yes, sir.
Don't do it, son.
Did she plan the kidnappings of both Franklin Anderson and Lawrence March?
Yes, that's right, both of them.
Are you crazy?
And was she responsible for the murder of George Ziegler in Cicero, Illinois?
That's right, yes, sir.
Oh, you idiot! Shut your mouth!
Don't you tell me to shut my mouth. For once in my life, I'm going to open it. All my life, I've been listening to you, and what did it get me? 25 years in Leavenworth, Ma. 25 years sitting behind those bars, thinking and wondering what it'd be like to walk on the outside without looking over my shoulder. Thinking and wondering what it'd be like to walk down the street and breathe in the fresh air. To get married, maybe, and have kids. To live, Ma. To live. But you didn't want us to live, did you, Ma? Not for ourselves, anyway. For you, maybe. Well, this is the way I'm living for you, Ma. 25 years rotting away in Leavenworth.
You wouldn't be in Leavenworth if you did what I said.
No? Well, you tell me, Ma. Where would I be then, huh? Where Arthur is, huh? Spending life in the pen? Or where Freddie is, running for his life? Or maybe with Herman, huh? Buried 6 feet under. Who you kidding, Ma?
You dumb, stupid little boy. I tried to teach you all the tricks. I tried to make you rich. But you did everything wrong. You and your stupid brothers made all the mistakes I taught you not to make.
Oh, Ma, you don't understand.
I slaved and I sweated and I worked for you. And this is what I get, huh? A stool pigeon informing on his own mother.
Ma, listen to me.
I should have taken the 4 of you and drowned you in the river like a bag of cats.
Oh, Ma, don't try to understand. Ma!
Don't call me Ma! You sniveling jerk! I got no sons. Because you don't mean anything to me. And if you want the truth, you're never dead. I don't need you, you hear? I don't need anybody. I'm Ma Barker, and I got where I was because I don't need people. And nobody, no one
painful headache often accompanies sinus congestion and cold's miseries. So remember, Dristan decongestant tablets. Modern medical achievement help drain all 8 sinus cavities, thus relieve pressure and headache pain due to sinus congestion. In one fast-acting, uncoated 3-layer tablet, Dristan combines a decongestant to help drain sinus cavities, critical areas of pressure and pain, an exclusive anti-allergen to help keep breathing passages dry and clear, pain relievers to bring quick relief from pain of headache, plus vitamin C. This is Dristan. Circulating through the blood, Dristan reaches all congested areas, shrinks all swollen membranes, promotes sinus drainage, thus relieves pressure and pain. Today, Dristan is widely imitated, but the fact is the exclusive Dristan formula cannot be duplicated. For relief of sinus headache, there's nothing like Dristan decongestant tablets.
Your attention, please. This won't take very long. Mrs. Barker, the evidence produced here tonight reveals that you have been the undisputed leader of one of the most vicious and infamous gangs in the history of American crime. But what is more shocking to this committee is the mockery you have made of Mother, and the cruel and vicious way that you have dominated and destroyed your own children. It seems certain, Mrs. Barker, that retribution for your life of crime is rapidly closing in on you. This committee has nothing more to say to you. This hearing is adjourned.
Early in January of 1935, FBI agents received word that Ma Barker and her son Fred were hiding out in a cottage in Ocklawaha, Florida. By 7 o'clock in the morning of January the 16th, 10 special agents had surrounded the house and asked Ma and her son Fred to surrender. They were answered with a burst of machine gun fire. Then followed a 3-hour gun battle. At 10:15, Ma Barker and her son Fred were dead. Tonight's witness was Ma Barker. Next week, the witness will be one of the most extraordinary criminals of U.S. crime, John Dillinger, who in the brief span of his career robbed 15 banks throughout the Middle West. John Dillinger, who was condemned by the FBI as public enemy number 1. John Dillinger next week on The Witness.
I'm George Maharis. With Martin Milner, I travel Route 66 in tomorrow's action story on most of these stations. Check it. Tune it in.
This portion of The Witness was brought to you by Dristan Decongestant Tablets, the exclusive 3-layer tablet discovery for relief from sinus congestion and misery of colds and hay fever. Dristan.
The preceding program was pre-recorded.